Have you ever felt invisible, overlooked, underestimated, or judged simply by the color of your skin? What if that judgment came from someone with a little bit of power, someone who could derail your life with a single, spiteful act? This isn't a story about a simple complaint. This is the story of Dr. Amara Vance, a brilliant black woman who was pushed too far by a gate agent at JFK. When her passport was snatched, her dignity challenged, she didn't just file a report. She unleashed a precise, devastating, and entirely legal storm that brought a multi-billion-dollar airline to its knees. The Century Inn Lounge at JFK's Terminal 4 was Dr. Amara Vance's sanctuary. It was a hushed world of muted grays and brushed chrome, smelling faintly of expensive espresso and quiet ambition. She sat in a plush armchair, the deep blue of her tailored suit a stark, beautiful contrast against the cream leather. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the October sky was a crisp, brilliant blue, a perfect canvas for the ballet of aircraft taking off and landing. Her flight, Majestic Air 117 to London Heathrow, didn't board for another hour. It was more than enough time. Amara was not a woman who rushed. Every element of her life was calibrated with precision, from the complex cybersecurity architectures she designed to the meticulously planned trip that awaited her. This wasn't just a vacation, it was a celebration. She had just closed a 9-figure contract for her firm, Cyberthorn Security, safeguarding the entire financial network of one of Europe's largest banking conglomerates. She was 34 years old, a titan in a field dominated by pale male faces, and she had earned every inch of her success. Her first-class ticket was not a splurge. It was a standard, a necessary tool that allowed her to arrive rested and ready to conquer. She took a slow sip of her chamomile tea, the warmth a pleasant counterpoint to the lounge's cool air. She could feel the subtle shift in atmosphere before she saw its source. A woman in a crisp, slightly too tight Majestic Air uniform glided through the lounge. Her name tag read Victoria, and below it, Lead Service Director. She had a helmet of blonde hair that looked as though it would shatter if touched, and a smile that didn't reach her cold, assessing eyes. Victoria wasn't serving. She was patrolling, her gaze flicking over the passengers, making silent, rapid-fire judgments. Her eyes landed on Amara. They paused for a fraction of a second too long, a flicker of something that Amara knew all too well. Confusion, tinged with suspicion. It was a look she'd been getting her entire life, in honors classes, in Ivy League lecture halls, in corporate boardrooms. "You don't belong here." Victoria's smile tightened as she approached. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I see your boarding pass, please?" Her voice was high and melodic, the kind that could deliver a compliment and an insult in the same breath. It was a spot check, not unheard of, but the lounge was sparsely populated, and Amara was the only person she had approached. Amara met her gaze, her own expression calm and unreadable. She placed her teacup silently on its saucer and reached into her Louis Vuitton carry-on, retrieving the stiff cardstock of her ticket. "Of course," she said, her voice a low, steady alto. Victoria took the pass, her manicured nails tapping against it. She looked from the ticket to Amara, then back again. "Dr. Amara Vance," she read aloud, drawing out the syllables. "And you're headed to London?" "That's what the ticket says," Amara replied, a hint of steel entering her tone. "It's just that this is a fully booked flight," Victoria said, the saccharine smile never wavering. "We've had some issues with fraudulent upgrades recently. We're just double-checking our premier passengers." It was a lie, and a clumsy one at that. Amara could see the lie in the way Victoria avoided her eyes, focusing instead on a point just over her shoulder. The implication was clear. A black woman in seat 1A? It had to be a mistake. A fraud. "I can assure you my ticket is quite legitimate," Amara said, keeping her voice even. "It was booked through our corporate travel partner, the same one Majestic Air has a multi-million-dollar contract with." She didn't need to add that her firm, Cyberthorn, was the very company that secured the digital infrastructure for Majestic Air's payment processing. It was an irony too rich, too delicious to waste this early in the game. Victoria's smile faltered for a moment. The mention of a corporate contract had pierced her bubble of authority. She handed the ticket back, the gesture stiff. Well, everything appears to be in order. Just doing my due diligence. Enjoy the lounge, Dr. Vance. She turned and walked away, her posture rigid. But Amara knew it wasn't over. That kind of prejudice wasn't a fleeting thought. It was a deep-seated conviction. Victoria Worthington believed Amara was an imposter, and she had been thwarted in her attempt to prove it. For a person like Victoria, that wasn't a resolution. It was a challenge. Amara watched her go, a cold knot forming in her stomach. She had a feeling that boarding this flight was going to be anything but smooth. The sanctuary of the lounge suddenly felt fragile, a gilded cage whose door had just been rattled. She pulled out her laptop, a sleek, powerful machine. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, not out of anxiety but out of habit. She navigated through layers of encrypted servers to her firm's internal dashboard. On a whim, she pulled up the Majestic Air corporate partner file. She scanned the service-level agreements, the payment gateways, the emergency protocols her own team had helped design. One protocol in particular caught her eye, the Aegis protocol. It was a kill switch, a corporate nuclear option designed to be used only in the event of a catastrophic security breach, like a full-scale ransomware attack or a compromised payment system. Activating it would instantly freeze every single financial asset, every bank account, every credit line associated with the client to prevent further damage. It was the digital equivalent of dropping a lead shield over a reactor meltdown. A powerful tool, a dangerous one. She stared at the protocol description for a long moment, then closed the laptop. It was, of course, just a professional curiosity. The call to board for Flight 117 echoed through the lounge, a gentle chime that belied the tension coiling in Amara's shoulders. She packed her laptop, slipped on her coat, and walked with unhurried grace toward Gate B24. The gate area was a predictable hub of controlled chaos. Families corralled restless children, business travelers typed furiously on their phones, and a long line was already forming for general boarding. The priority lane for first and business class, however, was nearly empty, and standing at its head, like a Valkyrie guarding the gates of Valhalla, was Victoria Worthington. Her smile was gone, replaced by a mask of stern professionalism that looked entirely unnatural on her features. She was flanked by another, younger agent who looked nervous, constantly glancing at Victoria for cues. Amara's presence seemed to charge the air. She could feel other passengers watching, a subtle shift in their attention. This was a spectacle in the making. "Good morning again, Dr. Vance," Victoria said as Amara reached the podium. The use of her title was now laced with a sneering condescension. "Victoria," Amara replied, her tone cool and level. She handed over her boarding pass and her passport, open to the photo page. It was a standard procedure she had completed hundreds of times. Victoria took the documents but didn't scan them. Instead, she stared at the passport photo, a perfectly professional image of Amara, and then stared at Amara herself. She held it up to the light, tilted it back and forth. "Is there a problem?" Amara asked, her patience wearing thin. "I'm just verifying the document," Victoria said loudly, pitching her voice for the benefit of the growing audience. "These new passports can be tricky, lots of security features, easy to replicate if you know what you're doing." The insinuation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Fake passport, fake person. The other agent shifted his weight, his eyes wide. A man in the priority line behind Amara huffed impatiently. "It's a standard-issue United States passport, issued by the State Department," Amara said, her voice dangerously quiet. "It is not fake. Please scan it so I can board my flight." "I'll be the judge of that," Victoria snapped, her professional veneer cracking to reveal the raw prejudice beneath. "I need to take this to my supervisor. There are some inconsistencies." This was the moment of decision. Amara knew this was a power play, a pathetic attempt to humiliate her. She could create a scene, demand a manager, and likely, after a protracted and embarrassing argument, be allowed to board. But something inside her, a deep well of exhaustion from a lifetime of these small cuts, these daily battles of legitimacy, solidified into a core of pure, unyielding resolve. "No, not this time." "You will do no such thing," Amara said, her voice dropping to a command. "You will scan my passport and my boarding pass, and you will return my property to me right now." A hush fell over the immediate gate area. Victoria's face flushed a blotchy, angry red. She had expected submission, or perhaps a tearful, flustered protest. She had not expected this calm, immovable authority. It enraged her. "Ma'am, you are causing a disturbance," she hissed. "I am the lead service director at this gate, and I am responsible for the security of this flight. I have determined that this document requires further verification." "You are a gate agent, not a Customs and Border Protection officer," Amara countered, her knowledge of airport protocols sharp and precise. "You have no authority to confiscate a federal document. You are, however, welcome to call a CBP officer if you genuinely believe there is an issue. I would welcome it." She knew it was a bluff Victoria couldn't call. Involving federal officers would create a paper trail, an official incident report. It would expose her actions to scrutiny she couldn't control. Victoria was a bully, and bullies operate in the murky space of implied authority, not under the bright lights of official procedure. Checkmate. But Victoria, consumed by her own rage, made a fatal error. Instead of backing down, she doubled down. With a swift, shocking movement, she closed the passport, tucked it under her arm, and turned to the other agent. "Finish boarding the priority line," she commanded. "I'm taking this to the station manager." And then she started to walk away. The world seemed to slow down for Amara. The casual theft of her identity, her key to the world, performed so publicly, so dismissively. It was a violation so profound it transcended mere rudeness. It was an act of erasure. "Give me back my passport," Amara said, her voice ringing out with absolute clarity. It stopped Victoria in her tracks. Victoria turned, a smirk playing on her lips. "I don't have to give you anything. You're being detained pending review. If you continue to be disruptive, I will have airport security remove you." She had snatched Amara's passport. She had stolen her freedom of movement, her identity, and she was smiling about it. Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead or shout. She simply stood there, her gaze locked on Victoria, and a chillingly calm thought formed in her mind. "You have no idea who I am, but you're about to find out." "Fine," Amara said, the word as cold and sharp as a shard of glass. "Keep it." She turned away from the podium, ignoring the stunned looks from the other passengers. She walked to a nearby seating area, took out her phone, and sat down. Her hands were perfectly steady. She wasn't a victim being detained. She was a strategist, and her opponent had just made the first foolish move on a chessboard she couldn't even see. The gate agent thought she had won. Amara Vance knew the war had just begun. 2 airport security guards, a burly man named Officer Miller and his younger, more hesitant partner, Officer Chen, escorted Amara to a small, windowless room deep within the terminal's sterile corridors. It wasn't an interrogation room, not officially. It was a dispute resolution lounge, a euphemism for a holding pen, furnished with uncomfortable plastic chairs and a water cooler. Victoria Worthington had been triumphant. She had spun a tale of a belligerent, uncooperative passenger whose documents were suspicious, a vague but effective poison pill. "We'll have our station manager and corporate security review this," she had declared to Officer Miller, handing over Amara's passport as if it were evidence of a crime. "She's not going anywhere until we're satisfied." Now sitting under the flat, humming fluorescent lights, Amara was the picture of tranquility. Miller stood by the door, arms crossed, projecting an aura of board authority. Chen sat behind a small desk, awkwardly filling out a preliminary incident report. "You get one phone call," Miller grunted, gesturing to Amara's phone on the table in front of her. "Lawyer, family member, whoever. Make it quick." Amara nodded slowly. "Thank you, officer." She picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over the contact for her high-powered corporate lawyer, a man who could rain legal hellfire on majestic air. But that was a conventional weapon. This situation called for something surgical, something paradigm-shifting. She scrolled past her lawyer, past her family, and stopped on a single entry labeled with an acronym. CTSEC Emergency. Cyberthorn Security Emergency Operations. She pressed the call button. It was answered on the first ring, not with a hello, but with a crisp, professional, Cyberthorn Ops, Agent ID 7 Gamma. How do you classify your incident? The voice was all business, stripped of any emotion. This is Dr. Amara Vance, Executive Director, ID Alpha 17, Amara said, her voice low and steady, a stark contrast to the sterile room. I need to invoke the Aegis Protocol. Authorization code. Vance Omega 900. There was a half-second of stunned silence on the other end. The Aegis Protocol was the stuff of legends at Cyberthorn, a theoretical doomsday switch that had never, in the firm's decade-long history, been activated by a field executive. It was a weapon of last resort. Dr. Vance, can you confirm the authorization code? The agent stammered. Vance Omega 900, Amara repeated calmly. The client is Majestic Air. The trigger event is a confirmed ongoing physical security breach by a client employee, resulting in the theft of secure credentials and federal identification documents belonging to a Level 1 Cyberthorn executive. My passport has been unlawfully confiscated by a Majestic Air employee named Victoria Worthington at JFK Terminal 4, Gate B24. This action compromises my identity and, by extension, creates a critical vulnerability for any system, including client systems, my credentials have access to. We must assume a worst-case scenario, that this is a targeted corporate espionage attempt to gain access to my credentials. She was framing it perfectly. It wasn't about a rude gate agent anymore. It was about a catastrophic corporate security failure. She was using their own language, their own paranoia, against them. The employee is refusing to return the documents and has detained me, cutting off my secure access. Amara continued, weaving a narrative that was technically true in every detail, yet epic in its implication. I cannot guarantee the integrity of my credentials or the security of our client's network under these circumstances. Initiate Aegis Protocol immediately. Freeze all financial assets and payment gateways for client MA771. Full lockdown. No exceptions. I will remain at this compromised location to contain the fallout. Understood, Dr. Vance, the agent said, his voice now tight with adrenaline. Initiating Aegis. The protocol requires a second verbal confirmation from another executive. Patch in Director Mark Shapiro in London. Use my executive override for immediate contact, Amara commanded. Officer Miller watched her, a flicker of curiosity breaking through his boredom. This didn't sound like a call to a lawyer. The language was strange, full of jargon he didn't understand. Seconds later, a new voice joined the call, tinny and laced with sleep. Amara? What in God's name is going on? It's 3 a.m. here. Mark, I've invoked Aegis on the Majestic Air account, Amara said, cutting straight to the point. I'm at JFK. An employee has confiscated my passport and is holding me in a security office. I'm treating it as a targeted asset seizure. I need your second verbal. There was a sharp intake of breath from the London side. Mark Shapiro was a brilliant, perpetually anxious man who ran Cyberthorn's European operations. He understood the implications instantly. They took your passport? An airline employee? Jesus. Okay, yes, I confirm. Shapiro Director, authorization confirmed. Execute the protocol. Lock them down, hard. Aegis is green, the ops agent said. Execution in 3, 2, 1. Amara heard a faint series of clicks and beeps on the line, the sound of digital floodgates slamming shut. The Majestic Air network is now isolated, the agent reported. All accounts are frozen, pending resolution of the Level 1 security breach. Thank you, Amara said, and ended the call. She placed her phone back on the table, face down. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. Outside this little room, the world of Majestic Air was blissfully unaware that its financial heart had just stopped beating. Fuel suppliers would try to process payments for refueling a 747 in Hong Kong, and the transaction would fail. Catering companies in Frankfurt would find their invoices rejected. Landing fee payments in Dubai would bounce. The company's global credit lines, worth billions, were now inert blocks of code. Officer Miller looked at her. Everything all right? Everything is under control, Amara replied, her voice smooth as silk. The chaos wouldn't be instantaneous. It would be a slow-moving shockwave, a cascade of failures that would build into a tsunami. She had just thrown a boulder into the placid lake of Majestic Air's operations. Now all she had to do was wait for the waves to come crashing back to shore, right to the door of this little room. Arthur Sterling, the CEO of Majestic Air, was halfway through a perfectly seared ahi tuna steak at the Capitol Grill in Manhattan when his phone began to vibrate against the polished mahogany of the table. It was Richard Evans, his CFO, a man who only ever called after hours if the company was on fire or had discovered a new source of gold. Given the frantic edge to the vibration, Arthur guessed it wasn't the latter. "I'm in a meeting, Richard," Arthur said, his voice a low growl of annoyance. "Arthur, you need to step out. Now!" Richard's voice was strained, high-pitched with a panicky energy that instantly curdled Arthur's appetite. "We have a code red, a full-blown financial blackout." Arthur excused himself, striding into the restaurant's opulent lobby. "What are you talking about? A blackout? Did a server go down?" "Worse, it's not our server. It's everything. Our banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, Deutsche Bank, they've all frozen our accounts. All of them. Our corporate credit lines, our operating funds, our payroll accounts. Everything is locked. We can't pay for fuel. We can't pay salaries. We can't even buy a box of paper clips. As of 20 minutes ago, Majestic Air has zero liquid assets." Arthur felt a wave of cold dread wash over him. This was impossible. A company of their size didn't just have its accounts frozen. It would take an act of God or the federal government. Why? Is it the SEC? An investigation? "No one knows. The banks are giving us nothing. Just that a Priority 1 security protocol was activated by a third-party vendor. They won't tell us who or why. They claim they can't. It's some kind of cybersecurity override we've never seen before." The words third-party vendor and cybersecurity snagged in Arthur's brain. His mind raced through their major contractors. Microsoft, Oracle. Then it hit him. Cyberthorn Security. The elite, near-mythical firm. They paid an obscene amount of money to protect their financial transactions. The architects of their entire secure payment system. "Get our head of IT on the line. Get their emergency contact at Cyberthorn," Arthur commanded, his voice dropping to an icy whisper. "Find out what happened. I want an answer in 5 minutes, or people are going to be fired before they have a chance to see their frozen paychecks." He hung up and stared out at the glittering lights of the city, his heart hammering against his ribs. This wasn't just a problem, it was an extinction-level event. The chaos spread exponentially. At London Heathrow, the captain of Flight 118, fully boarded and ready for its return trip to JFK, was informed that the airline's fuel payment had been declined. He was grounded. In Tokyo, the ground crew for a 777 to Los Angeles walked off the job when their direct deposits for the day failed to materialize. In Chicago, the catering service refused to load meals onto 3 separate flights. Passengers began to revolt. The Majestic Air Twitter feed became a dumpster fire of furious customers stranded on tarmacs and in terminals. The stock, traded on after-hours markets, began to plummet as the first whispers of a major operational failure started to leak. Back in the corporate war room in Majestic Air's Dallas headquarters, a team of terrified executives and IT specialists were frantically trying to break through the digital wall that had descended around their company. "It's the Aegis Protocol," a pale, sweating tech lead named David finally announced, his voice trembling. "It's from Cyberthorn. It's their ultimate failsafe. It's designed to be unbreakable from the outside, or from the inside. Only they can lift it." Richard Evans, the CFO, slammed his fist on the table. "Why? Did we get hacked? Are we under attack?" "That's the thing," David said, pointing a shaky finger at his screen. "The protocol wasn't triggered by an attack. It was manually initiated by an authorized executive at Cyberthorn. It says here the trigger event is ongoing client-side security breach compromising a Level 1 Cyberthorn asset." The room fell silent. "What does that mean?" Richard asked. "Did someone break into their offices?" "I don't know what a Level 1 asset is," David confessed, "but the point of origin for the signal, the command that started all of this, it's not from a Cyberthorn office. I've been running a trace on the IP address." He paused, his eyes widening in disbelief as the final data point resolved on his screen. "That's not possible." "What is it, David?" Arthur Sterling's voice boomed over the speakerphone, dripping with menace. David swallowed hard. "Sir, The Aegis protocol that has shut down our entire global operation. It was triggered 37 minutes ago from a mobile device connected to the public Wi-Fi network at our own gate, Gate B24, in Terminal 4, at JFK. The silence in the room was absolute. They were not under a sophisticated cyber attack from a rival nation. They weren't being held hostage by a shadowy hacker collective. The financial cataclysm that was currently vaporizing their airline had been unleashed from inside one of their own terminals. The boulder had been thrown, and they were just beginning to feel the first terrifying ripples of the tsunami. The information hit Arthur Sterling like a physical blow. JFK, Gate B24. The source of his corporate apocalypse was a Wi-Fi signal in his own house. It was absurd. It was insulting. "Get me Sarah Jenkins," he barked into the phone. Jenkins was the JFK station manager, a tough, no-nonsense veteran who ran the airline's most important hub. "I want to know everything that has happened at that gate in the last hour, every delay, every argument, every passenger complaint. Dig up the security footage. I want to know who was sitting in that chair holding the button that blew up my company." While the Dallas war room scrambled to follow his orders, Arthur instructed his team to do a deep dive on Cyberthorn. Who are their executives? Who has the authority to trigger something like this? I want names, photos, everything. Cross-reference them with the passenger manifest for every flight leaving that gate today. The two streams of investigation began to converge with terrifying speed. Sarah Jenkins, the station manager, was initially baffled. Operations at Gate B24 had been routine, except for one minor incident. "We had a passenger removed from the boarding line for Flight 117 to Heathrow," Jenkins reported over the phone, her voice strained. "A first-class passenger, our lead service director, Victoria Worthington, flagged her passport as suspicious. The passenger became difficult. She's currently with airport security in the T4 holding room." Arthur felt a prickle of unease. "A first-class passenger? Who was she?" "Name is Vance. Dr. Amara Vance," Jenkins said, reading from the report Victoria had filed. Simultaneously in Dallas, the profile of a key Cyberthorn executive flashed on the main screen in the war room. It was a woman with intelligent, determined eyes, impeccably dressed in a business suit. Below the photo was her biography. Name: Dr. Amara Vance. Title: Executive Director, Global Infrastructure Security, Cyberthorn Security Clearance, Level 1 Executive. Full authority over all client-side security protocols, including Aegis protocol activation. Richard Evans, the CFO, felt the blood drain from his face. "Arthur," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "you need to see this." A photo and bio were sent to Arthur's phone. He stared at the screen, at the face of the woman his airline was currently holding in a back room over a suspicious passport. Dr. Amara Vance, Executive Director, the architect of their security, the holder of the keys to their kingdom. It all clicked into place with the sickening finality of a guillotine. The client-side security breach, the compromised Level 1 asset. It wasn't a metaphor, it was her. She was the asset. And Victoria Worthington, his overzealous, prejudiced gate agent, had compromised her by confiscating her federal identification. Amara Vance hadn't just gotten angry. She had followed her company's most extreme protocol to the letter, classifying the theft of her passport as a corporate security threat of the highest order. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it was, from a certain paranoid cybersecurity point of view, completely logical. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," Arthur breathed, a sense of dizzying vertigo overwhelming him. He leaned against the cool marble wall of the restaurant lobby. His multi-billion-dollar global corporation was being held hostage, not by a hacker, but by a passenger they had wronged. A passenger who held the kill switch and was currently sitting in a plastic chair in one of their own damn offices. "Get the jet ready," he snarled to his assistant. "I'm going to JFK, now." Then he called Sarah Jenkins back. "Sarah, listen to me very, very carefully. The woman you are holding, Dr. Vance, I need you to tell me everything about the employee who detained her. Worthington. I want her service record, her disciplinary history, everything." "Of course, Arthur." Victoria can be a bit rigid. She's had a few passenger complaints in the past about her attitude, mostly minor. I have a feeling this one isn't going to be minor, Arthur said, his voice dangerously low. Find Victoria Worthington. Bring her to that holding room. Do not let her speak to Dr. Vance. Do not let her do anything but stand there. And Sarah, pray. Pray that we can fix this. As Arthur's car sped toward the private airfield, a new alert popped up on his phone. It was from his PR department. An anonymous passenger from Flight 117 had just posted a video on Twitter. The quality was shaky, filmed on a phone, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed a tall, blonde gate agent snatching a passport from a calm, elegantly dressed black woman. It showed the agent, Victoria, sneering as she walked away. The post was barely 30 minutes old and already had 10,000 retweets. The hashtag was starting to trend, flying while black on majestic. Arthur Sterling closed his eyes. The plane hadn't even taken off, and he was already flying straight into the heart of the storm. The problem was no longer just digital, it was now very, very public. The door to the small security room opened, breaking the heavy silence. Arthur Sterling swept in, a whirlwind of expensive tailoring and sheer panic barely masked by a veneer of authority. He was flanked by a pale and shaken Sarah Jenkins. Behind them, 2 airport security guards led a bewildered and indignant Victoria Worthington into the room. Amara Vance looked up from the chair where she had been sitting, utterly still, for the better part of 2 hours. Her expression was one of sublime, unshakable calm. She held all the cards and everyone in the room knew it. The power dynamic had been inverted so completely it was almost a physical force. She, the detainee, was now the one in charge. The CEO of the airline holding her captive was there to plead his case. Dr. Vance, Arthur began, trying to inject a tone of collegial reasonableness into his voice. I am Arthur Sterling, CEO of Majestic Air. It appears there has been a catastrophic misunderstanding. Amara simply looked at him, her silence more powerful than any outburst. She didn't grant him the relief of an immediate reply. She let him stand there, stewing in the consequences of his company's actions. Victoria, however, could not remain silent. Seeing Amara, she puffed up with self-righteous anger. Mr. Sterling, this is the woman I told you about. She was disruptive and uncooperative, and her document— Be silent, Arthur snapped, not even bothering to look at her. His eyes were locked on Amara. The ferocity of his tone made Victoria flinch as if struck. He turned his full attention back to Amara. Dr. Vance, on behalf of the entire airline, I want to offer my deepest, most sincere apology. What happened to you at that gate was inexcusable. It was unprofessional, and I assure you, it is not what Majestic Air stands for. Amara finally spoke, her voice measured and cool. What Majestic Air stands for, Mr. Sterling, is a matter of public record. And at this moment, my public record shows I am being illegally detained by your staff. My passport, a federal document, has been stolen by your employee. She gestured with her chin toward Victoria. And your company's global operations are, as a direct result, currently offline. So please spare me the public relations script. Let's talk about the reality of the situation. Arthur swallowed. He was used to commanding boardrooms, not begging for mercy in a fluorescent lit box. Of course. Right. The protocol. Dr. Vance, we need you to deactivate it. We are hemorrhaging millions of dollars by the minute. Flights are grounded in over 30 countries. We are on the verge of total collapse. I am aware, Amara said. That is the intended function of the protocol when a critical asset is compromised. The system is working perfectly. The sheer audacity of her statement, the beautiful, logical coldness of it, left Arthur speechless for a moment. She wasn't being vindictive. She was merely stating a fact from her professional reality. Okay, he said, regaining his composure. What do you need? What will it take to resolve this breach? This was the moment. Amara leaned forward slightly, her gaze sharp as a laser. My demands are not complicated, Mr. Sterling, but they are non-negotiable. She ticked them off on her fingers. 1. The immediate and unconditional return of my passport. Right now. Arthur turned to Victoria, his expression thunderous. Give it to her. Victoria, her face a mask of disbelief, reluctantly pulled the passport from her uniform pocket and slapped it on the table. Amara didn't touch it. Not yet. 2, Amara continued, the immediate termination of Miss Worthington's employment. I want her security credentials revoked, and I want to watch her be escorted from this airport before I make another move. Victoria gasped. You can't do that. I was following procedure. You created a procedure to satisfy your own prejudice, Amara said, her eyes finally flashing with fire. You abused your authority, broke the law, and in doing so, you have cost this company more money in 2 hours than you will earn in 1,000 lifetimes. You are a liability, a racist liability. She looked back at Arthur. This is not negotiable. Arthur didn't hesitate. He looked at Sarah Jenkins. Sarah, see to it. Effective immediately. Sarah nodded grimly and gestured for the security guards. Victoria, come with me. As she was led out, still sputtering protests, Victoria's eyes met Amara's one last time. There was no victory in Amara's gaze, only a profound and chilling finality. 3, Amara went on, her attention already back on the CEO. Majestic Air will issue a formal, public apology, not a vague, we are sorry for any inconvenience statement. It will name me. It will state that I was racially profiled and illegally detained by your staff. It will be posted on all your social media channels and sent as a press release to every major news outlet. Arthur's face tightened. This was a PR nightmare, but he knew he had no choice. Done. 4, Majestic Air will make a $5 million donation to the NORACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. The wire transfer will be initiated from a non-frozen account. I assume you have one somewhere. And I will receive confirmation before the Aegis protocol is lifted. A $5 million donation. It was a staggering sum, but a fraction of what they were losing every hour. We can do that, Arthur agreed, the words tasting like ash. And finally, Amara said, leaning back, you will book me a seat on the next available flight to London. Not on Majestic Air. I will be flying with your competitor, British Airways, in their first-class cabin. Your company will pay for it, and a car will be waiting to take me to the correct terminal as soon as we are concluded here. Arthur could only nod. It was the most expensive airline ticket in history. These are my terms, Amara concluded. Once I have received email confirmation of the wire transfer, a draft of the public apology for my approval, and I have seen visual confirmation that Ms. Worthington is no longer an employee, I will make a call to Cyberthorn Ops and have the protocol lifted. The choice, Mr. Sterling, is yours. He stared at her. This woman who had single-handedly brought his empire to a standstill. She hadn't screamed or cried. She had used the tools at her disposal, her intellect, her authority, and the very system he had paid her to build, to exact perfect, precise justice. She had not only fought back, she had rewritten the rules of the fight itself. We accept your term, Arthur Sterling said, the words of surrender feeling foreign and bitter on his tongue. The aftermath for Majestic Air was brutal and swift. Once Amara received the confirmation she demanded, a screenshot of the $5 million wire transfer to the NORACP, a draft of an apology that was suitably groveling, and a live feed from an airport security camera showing a devastated Victoria Worthington turning in her badge, she made the call. Dr. Vance, Alpha 17, she said into her phone. The security breach has been resolved. The compromised asset is secure. Rescind the Aegis protocol. Authorization code, Vance Theta 117. Across the globe, digital cash registers began to ring again. Fuel payments went through. Credit lines unlocked. The vast, complex financial machinery of Majestic Air sputtered back to life. But the damage was done. The 2.5-hour freeze had cost the company an estimated $120 million in direct losses, grounded over 400 flights, and stranded nearly 60,000 passengers. The stock, when the market opened the next morning, would tank by over 30%, wiping out billions in shareholder value. The story, fueled by the passengers' viral video and the airline's stunning public apology, naming both Amara and Victoria, became an international incident. For Victoria Worthington, the reckoning was absolute. Being fired was only the beginning. She was not just escorted from the airport, she was blacklisted. The story of the gate agent who cost her company over $100 million because of a fit of prejudice became an industry legend. a cautionary tale told in crew lounges from Singapore to San Francisco. No airline would touch her. She tried to sue Majestic Air for wrongful termination, but the mountain of evidence, including her history of complaints and the viral video, resulted in the case being thrown out. Within a year, she was working at a rental car kiosk in a desolate corner of the Albany airport. The bright blue of her old uniform a mocking memory. The smirk she had worn when she snatched Amara's passport was gone, replaced by the vacant, defeated look of someone whose life had been irrevocably broken by a single, hateful decision. That was her hard karma. Not a dramatic confrontation, but a quiet, slow slide into irrelevance. For Amara Vance, life changed as well, but in a profoundly different way. She boarded the British Airways flight to London, where she was treated not just as a first-class passenger, but as royalty. The story of her quiet, surgical takedown of a corporate giant made her an icon. She became a reluctant hero, a symbol of empowerment for Black women and anyone who had ever felt small and powerless in the face of corporate arrogance or systemic bias. She was interviewed by major news outlets, not as a victim, but as a strategist. She spoke eloquently about the daily tax of prejudice and the importance of knowing the systems you operate within and how to use them to your advantage. Cyberthorn Security, far from reprimanding her, gave her a promotion and a seat on the board. She had, after all, stress-tested their most powerful protocol in a live-fire exercise and proven its devastating effectiveness. She became the new face of the company, calm, brilliant, and not to be trifled with. Majestic Air, under the humiliated leadership of Arthur Sterling, was forced into a period of deep and painful introspection. They instituted a mandatory top-to-bottom racial bias and de-escalation training program designed in consultation with civil rights groups. They diversified their executive board. They changed their policies, removing the discretionary power of gate agents to confiscate travel documents. They paid dearly, not just in money, but in reputation. They learned in the most public and painful way possible that in the modern world, power doesn't always come from size or wealth. Sometimes it comes from a quiet, brilliant woman in a blue suit, armed with a laptop and a profound refusal to be erased. Amara Vance had not just frozen an airline's bank account. She had frozen a moment in time, forcing an entire industry to look in the mirror and confront the ugly reflection staring back. 1 year later, the world was different. For some, the change was seismic. For others, it was a subtle shift in the atmospheric pressure of their daily lives. For the airline industry and the tech world, the JFK incident, as it was now formally known in business school case studies, had become a legend, a modern fable about power, prejudice, and the unexpected consequences of underestimating the person standing in front of you. Dr. Amara Vance stood on a different kind of stage now. It was not a sterile boardroom or a tense security office, but the main stage of the Global Summit for Technology and Ethics in San Francisco. A single spotlight cut through the darkness of the cavernous auditorium, illuminating her against a vast screen that displayed the Cyberthorn logo intertwined with the summit's emblem. She wore a striking emerald green dress, her calm confidence a palpable force that held the thousands of attendees in rapt silence. She was no longer just a cybersecurity expert. She was a thought leader, an icon. "We often talk about bias in algorithms," she said, her voice resonating with the quiet authority that had once frozen a CEO in his tracks. "We discuss how human prejudice can be coded into the systems that now govern our lives, from loan applications to parole hearings. But we often forget about the bias hardwired into our human systems, the protocols of customer service, the chains of command, the discretionary power we grant to individuals within a corporate structure. These are also a form of code, and like any code, they can contain bugs, vulnerabilities that can be exploited by malice or ignorance." She paused, letting the words sink in. What happened last year was not a failure of technology. On the contrary, the technology worked flawlessly. It was a failure of a human system. An employee, armed with a small amount of authority and a large amount of prejudice, executed a flawed protocol. She made a judgment based on what she saw, not what she knew. The result was a cascade failure, not just for her company, but for her own life. In his Dallas office, an office that now featured a prominent print of a Jacob Lawrence painting from his Migration series, Arthur Sterling watched the live stream of Amara's speech. He didn't flinch at her words. He absorbed them. The man from a year ago, arrogant, panicked, reactionary, was gone, replaced by someone more weary, more thoughtful, and infinitely more aware. The incident had almost cost him his job, but in saving it, he had been forced to change, or at least to perform a convincing facsimile of change that was slowly becoming real. On his desk lay the company's latest diversity and inclusion report. The numbers were up, not by a staggering amount, but the needle was moving. Promotions for women and people of color were up 18%. Formal complaints of discrimination were down 40%. The Vance mandates, as the new training and protocol overhauls were informally called, were working. He minimized the live stream as a message popped up on his internal chat. It was from Captain Eva Rousseau, one of their rising stars. A black woman who had just been promoted to lead pilot for the lucrative New York to Paris route. Arthur, the message read, just wanted to say the new transparent review process for route assignments is a game changer. For the first time, it feels like we're all flying on a level field. Thank you. Arthur leaned back in his chair, a complex cocktail of emotions swirling within him. There was the lingering sting of the $100 million lesson, the public humiliation. But there was also a sliver of something else, a strange, unfamiliar sense of pride. He had been dragged kicking and screaming into doing the right thing, but the view from the other side was, he had to admit, better. 2,000 miles away in the damp, gray chill of an Albany autumn, Victoria Worthington pulled her thin, polyester uniform jacket tighter. The name on her badge now read Victoria W., and the logo was for Apex Car Rentals. Her world had shrunk to the size of a small linoleum-floored kiosk overlooking a parking garage filled with economy sedans. The karmic blow that had struck her was not a sudden, dramatic explosion, but a slow, grinding erosion of her life. A family approached the counter, the parents bickering, the children whining. The father, a florid man in a wrinkled golf shirt, slapped his credit card on the counter. "I booked a full size. I'm not taking a compact," he snapped, his voice filled with the casual disdain of a man used to getting his way. Victoria felt a familiar flicker of rage, the same self-righteous indignation she had felt when she saw Amara Vance in the first-class lounge. But now she had no power, no authority to wield. She was the bug, not the system. "I'm very sorry, sir," she said, her voice a monotone learned from 1,000 similar encounters. "Let me see what I can do." As she typed, her fingers stiff and clumsy on the worn keyboard, a man in a sharp suit stood nearby, talking loudly on his phone. "No, absolutely. Amara Vance is a genius. After she took down Majestic, every Fortune 500 company has been lining up to hire Cyberthorn to audit their human systems. She's basically created an entire new field of consulting." Victoria flinched as if burned. She kept her head down, her blonde hair no longer perfectly coiffed, falling across her face. The name was a ghost that haunted her waking hours. It was the name of the woman who had everything, the woman who had taken everything from her. She didn't understand that Amara had taken nothing. Victoria had given it all away with a single spiteful act. In her mind, she was the victim. This belief was the last, crumbling pillar of her pride, and the very thing that ensured she would never escape the prison she had built for herself. Back in San Francisco, Amara was concluding her speech. The ultimate goal of a secure system is not just to repel attacks, but to be resilient, to be fair, to be just. And so, today Cyberthorn and I are launching the Aegis Initiative, she announced, and the screen behind her changed to a new logo. We are funding a $10 million fellowship for a new generation of cybersecurity experts from historically underrepresented communities. We will not just teach them how to protect networks, we will teach them how to build better, more equitable human systems. Because the strongest firewall in the world is useless if the person at the gate is compromised by prejudice. The auditorium erupted in a deafening, sustained standing ovation. As Amara walked off stage, a young woman with bright, eager eyes and a laptop covered in coding stickers rushed up to her. "Dr. Vance, I'm Maya. I'm a sophomore at Howard. What you are doing, it's the reason I chose this field." Amara stopped and gave the young woman her full attention. a warm, genuine smile spreading across her face. "Maya," she said, shaking her hand, "it's a pleasure to meet you. Tell me, have you thought about applying for a fellowship?" In that moment, the cycle was complete. The energy of an ugly, destructive act had been captured, transformed, and redirected into a force for creation. The gate that had been slammed shut in her face a year ago had been kicked off its hinges, replaced by 1,000 new doors she was now opening for others. The echo of a single injustice was being drowned out by a rising chorus of opportunity. The story of Dr. Amara Vance is a powerful reminder that the most effective battles aren't always fought with the loudest voices, but with the sharpest minds. She faced down discrimination not just with courage, but with competence, turning the very systems meant to protect a corporation into a tool for justice. Her story shows us the incredible power that lies in knowing your worth and understanding the rules of the game better than your opponent. It's a testament to the fact that one person, pushed to their limit, can indeed move mountains, or in this case, ground an entire airline. If Amara's story of strength and sweet, righteous karma resonated with you, please help us share it. Hit that like button to show your support. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story of empowerment. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true stories of justice and incredible real-life drama. Thank you for listening.